that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 240 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. We are back, baby. I'm back from vacation. I was at Ocean City, Maryland, soaking in the sun, eating some crabs, having some beers. And now, everybody else is looking around, seeing all the girls in bikinis. Me, I'm like, yo, I'm thinking Dynasty running backs here. We got to start talking about this. I got back late last night, and I'm like, Snook, let's start recording. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, Dad. You got your vacation over with. I got mine. I was out in Vegas just a few weeks ago. We're finally back in business, back on the pod, getting that chemistry rolling again, and we're going to be just firing at you guys the next few weeks, all the way up until the season starts. So I'm excited. We're sorting through my favorite position group to talk about is the running backs. Dad, dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, we just recorded our YouTube-only Smash or Pass episode of the top 10 running backs and trades to get them. Make sure if you guys don't, make sure you guys subscribe to us on YouTube because we are putting out content that is not just on the podcast. It's exclusive just to YouTube. Even if you aren't a big YouTube guy, go out there, or girl, go out there and subscribe just to help us out a little bit. We're almost at our goal of 1,000. Which is just shout out to Brock Dynasty. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. He has taken the YouTube page and really gone from, 2 months ago, we were at 200 followers. Now we're at 900, so it's like it has grown exponentially and it's different content. So make sure you guys check that out. Check out the Patreon as well. Make sure that is popping right now. Like people are in there talking shop 24/7. Different tiers for different things you need, but for everybody, there's that group chat, talking shop, and access to us. So make sure you guys check that out. So today we're going to talk running backs. The biggest question I get, and it's startup season. I'm doing a startup with shout out to at Fantasy Guru. He invited me to be in there, one of their leagues. So it's a non-Smash Accept league. It feels weird drafting in a non-Smash Accept, but I'm starting to look here, and it's like, man, the running back market is very different when you go to trade versus when you're in a startup. I'm seeing the values vary differently, and that's because of that running back landscape. Snook, we keep talking about it. We're comparing it to 2025 classes. Right now in my rankings, I have 5 running backs in the 2025 class that I prefer to Jonathan Brooks, almost 6. So I think we have to talk about that running back landscape. Before we even get into that, it's going to get flipped on its head. The Joe Mixons, the Derrick Henrys, the Alvin Kamaras are going to fade out of, fantasy glory. The guys that are in that middle area that we're trading for 25 first are going to they're going to disappear because This is like 2017 where it's going to just change everything. It's going to reset it all. And you're going to have the new Kamara, the new Mixon, the new Henry, the new Jones. It's going to be a new set of 5 or 6 household names that are just going to change it all.
Yeah, I mean, just to start it off, we got Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Ollie Gordon, Ashton Jonty. Those are 4 guys that I would definitely take over Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah.
They're all better players. They're all better prospects.
I have Henderson in there too. Because, I mean, if he came out this year, he would have been higher than Brooks.
Exactly. Yeah, so, I mean, it's crazy, man. That running back class is crazy. I've already been doing tons of film watch and just kind of diving through prospect profiles and seeing like who's good at who stands out the most to me and stuff. There's some other guys that are some key names that are big sleepers in this type of deep class. I mean, you got Devin Neal from Kansas, who's a really talented player going into his 4th year there. So there's a lot of players coming in. There's probably 7 or 8 guys that just like that 2023 class. I mean, we got 4 studs from that. Could be 5 if Kendre Miller.
This could be more.
Could be 5 and 6 if Kendre Miller and Tajay Spears put it together. So this could be more. This type of class is not high end wise. I don't think we're gonna have like a Bijan Gibbs type. Maybe we get like a Gibbs type, but I doubt it. But they're gonna be like, we're gonna get a lot of like, you're gonna have like your Javonte Williams is like your Najee Harris, your like that type of class, like your Travis Etienne. Like it's gonna be a good class like that, in my opinion.
I'm glad you said Etienne it there. Yeah, like Najee when he came out, or Javonte when they came out, not where they're at now. And I think you're right. I think 5 guys are gonna enter the top 10 by the time the rookie drafts are over. Enter that area of top 10 because the running backs right now, and I have 15 guys that I posted today that I think are worth a 25 first. The first 3, no doubt about it, they're worth an early 25 first plus. and that's Hall, Bijan, and Gibbs. However you want it, those are the big three. Those are the only ones in a startup that I would. They're going in the second round, and you gotta really look at where you're at. I like to build with the wide receivers. I like to fill in with the running backs. But these are your hammers. These are the guys that like you can build a foundation around these three running backs, because like you said in our YouTube only, these are guys that, you know, they say your typical running back is a 2 to 3 year window, and that's your Zamir Whites. You know, Bijan, Hall, Gibbs, this is a 6 to 7 year window, like Kamara, like Mixon, like McCaffrey. Those guys are household names for 5-6 years. So that's why I have no problem. You know, Bijan and Hall keep going in the second round. Gibbs goes late second, early third. These are guys that are going to be foundational assets where, you know, sometimes in your startups, you get one of these guys and you play a little hero running back. You take one of these guys and then you start filling in those wide receivers. They're the guys that are going to, especially in a PPC league, win you titles for year after year, and they're a little bit more difficult to buy. The next set is your elite producers. These guys, I say, right now, Snook, are all worth an early 25 first, and that's McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne. The key to it all is determining where these 25 firsts are. If they're truly random, I'm not trading it. If you say it's a lock for a top 3 and I'm not a contender, I would trade that for Christian McCaffrey. I would trade that for Jonathan Taylor. I would trade, or the other way around, I would trade them for that pick if I was rebuilding. Always try to get a little add-on, you know, even if it's, you know, a Zach Moss, a, you know, maybe a Zeke, something like that where you at least get a little bit of production. Then the league winners, who I think have tremendous upside, but they also have a little bit of downside, is Saquon, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker. You got your late firsts of Rachaad White, James Cook, Jacobs, Pacheco, and Brooks. Let's start with these guys here that are borderline worth a first. You know, let's start with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is someone that in dynasty startups right now has fallen to the 7th round. All these guys go late 6th, early 7th, which is after where the 25 first usually are valued. So these are guys that I think have championship potential, guys that could win you titles and have a little bit of longevity. I think Kenneth Walker is a safe guy because of Zach Charbonnet being drafted last year as his backup. I see there's zero, but next to no possibility that Seattle takes a running back in the 2025 class, making Walker a very safe asset with some upside.
Yeah, I think Kenneth Walker is a really talented player. I mean, 23 years old, has a draft capital, lead athlete, back-to-back top 20 finishes, despite missing like 3-4 games in both of his first 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. This is a guy that was on fire last year for a lot of the year, especially in the start. He has big play upside. It can win you weeks. Like we saw that play against the Saints, that like 85-yard rushing touchdown. Like he has that in his bag at any given moment. That's what I've always liked about him. He's not a really elite or dynamic pass catcher, but he can catch the damn ball. Like I've seen it. I've seen him do it. I've seen it happen a lot. Like 30, he was pacing like mid 30s receptions in both of his first 2 years. Like that's fine. Get that up to like low 40s, like that 41, 42 range, and that'll be perfect for what he is. Like 10 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, and like 40 receptions in the top 5 year. So that's why I think he's a guy that I like, and he's not really expensive anymore. Like he was expensive, and I was out on him at that cost after his rookie year. But now he's like, people have him outside the top 10. It's like he's better than Cook. He's better than White. He's more talented than Kyron Williams. It's just if he can put it all together, and they got a new coaching staff in Seattle. So I'm excited to see that.
And it's a tale of 2 seasons for him, honestly. He started out weeks 1 through 7, averaging 80% of the snap share, finishing as an RB1 in 4 of the first 6 weeks with a bye week in there. Every single week, you look at it, 17, 18, 17, 18, 26 rushes. You know what I mean? He finished there with some big time performances. He was RB3 in week 3, RB8, RB14, and then you watch right after he got a little banged up after week 7 in Arizona, and it just tapered off, and it went to an area where he only had one more RB 1 week the rest of the season. If you flip those around and he starts that way cold and finishes this way hot, he's up in that Saquon tier for sure. And he has the ability to jump into that tier. I think he's arguably one of the safest running backs to buy. I said that last year before they drafted Charbonnet. But now I think he really is, and I think he's got that baked in cost that someone's already there. But at the same time, he's going to be that lead back. I think it looks more to a 80-20 where Charbonnet's more of just a backup now. He's proven that he's much more talented. He's proven that he's the guy. So, I mean, he was neck and neck with Breece Hall when they got drafted. Now, like he's become a discount. He's someone that you can get now for the 1.9 to 1.12. And I think if you're a running back needy team, that's the perfect buy because you're going to get borderline RB1 production and insulation that he's going to keep his job. So he is a great fit there in that situation. The next guy,
because people talk about Charbonnet like he's like this elite pass catcher, like he doesn't just catch 2-yard swing routes. Like he's not a great pass catcher. He can catch the damn ball, but he has zero versatility.
Neither of them were great.
But Kenneth Walker can actually make people miss after the catch. Zach Charbonnet is like a block of cheese running out there in football pads.
Yeah. Zach Charbonnet is a guy that I've been trying to. If I've been selling him to the Walker owners for Charbonnet in the third for a second. That's just where I'm at because I feel like the max you're ever going to get for him, even if Walker goes down, is a second. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about with Zach Charbonnet. He is in that fringe top 10 handcuff area. I think even if Walker goes down, he produces as a mid RB2 at best. He never becomes an RB1. We're off that window. The next guy, Rachaad White. So Rachaad White finished as the RB4 last year, 15 plus fantasy points per game in PPR. They go out and they get Bucky Irving, who has a very similar skill set. So I feel like they're not trying to do complementary. They're doing one guy and then a backup with Bucky Irving. I'm not big on Irving, but especially with the draft capital of where he went. Rachaad White seems to be a guy. He's still going in that late 6th, early 7th. Is he a value at that point? Like this is someone where could he be a Kamara light because of his skill set? I think he's someone that's going to be around a long time. People look at the fact that he turned 25 and they're really soured by that. But you look at the usage, he's not getting banged up in the middle. He's great in the pass catching. He's great on the outside, not a banger in the middle. It's like I was really thinking that they would draft a guy like Audric Estime to bang in the middle to do those other things. But I think Rachaad White is still going to have a borderline RB1 season. He's worth a late 25 first. I'm not super comfortable drafting him where he goes in startups because he's going in similar areas as Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison. Like I would much rather have the wide receiver there. Even, I drafted Ladd McConkey after him, and I'm just like, I would much rather have the wide receiver for that safety. But Rachaad White does still have that top 10 ceiling.
Yeah, it's funny because we've talked about this many times together, Dad. Like, the dynasty landscape, it's hard to like people and players, or to like players and get attached to them, because at any given moment a player's a buy, at any given moment a player's a sell. And Rachaad White was a guy I had RB3 in that class throughout the process, like hammered for Rachaad White. He finally hits, and now I'm like, all right, on to the next guy. I don't need you anymore.
Well, and that's the running back position itself, right? I mean, if it's not a Bijan, Gibbs, or Hall, or, maybe Jonathan Taylor or ETN, like there's like 6 guys that I'm like, okay, if it's not them, I'm willing to trade and insulate wherever I can. You know what I mean? And I think White's a guy that you get Mixon in a second. White's a guy that you get a first and a toss in Gus Edwards type. You know what I mean? Like you just insulate and try to get some production, but it's all about what your team build look like. On the flip side, if I'm a smash contender and I'm a running back short, and I can give what might be the 111, 112 for Rachaad White, I think that's good value too. You know what I mean? Like I'm just not trying to buy them right now. I'm trying to, look for the guy that is worried that Bucky Irving's there, kick the tires, and maybe I give the 201 for him this year, or I give a pair of seconds because he's worried, or I tear down from, say, ETN to White in a first, or one of those kind of moves, where you're trying to get to the area. I'm not actively pursuing Rachaad White in this current landscape.
He's going to be the workhorse guy there. I mean, Bucky's definitely not going to be that guy, but Bucky's a fun player. Like he adds a little bit of a dynamic to that offense to help kind of make plays and create after the catch and be like that fun little 1-2 punch with Rachaad White. I think Bucky will maybe eat into a little bit of White's receiving production, but like White's a better receiver. Like it's just that simple. So it's like, it's so weird. It's very like that Tennessee Pollard to Tajay Spears situation. Yeah. But I know Zolti pounds the drum for Bucky, and Zolti is a good friend of mine. So I hope Bucky works out. But I mean, he's cheap. He's a good handcuff. If White goes down, Bucky's gonna probably put up a lot of fantasy points in that offense. Baker loves to check the ball down, so
that's the key to it all.
He's a good stash, and he's super cheap. So why not?
in that same area, and a guy that I just took in Guru's draft in the late 7th. So a full round after Rachaad White, I took James Cook. And I know you don't love James Cook, but you got to look at when they switched to Brady as the coordinator, he went from 14.4 fantasy points to game to 16.7. 16.7 during that time of those final 8 games was a top 10 running back. He was top 5 in yards. He was top 10 in carries. He was top 10 in targets. So, I mean, it changed completely. And Snook, I know these are guys that we kind of, like one day you're here, one day you're there. For me, I'm kind of buying into James Cook right now because that offense is going to need to run more. I do think Ray Davis does jump in and get some more of the red zone carries, but James Cook, 2 touchdowns with as much volume as he had. I think if he enters in that area, he has 6 to 8 touchdowns. He's a top 6 running back last year, and that's where we're at. Where am I investing crazy capital? No, but where I drafted him above Stephon Diggs. I drafted him above, Keon Coleman. I drafted him in that area where it's like, okay, you got young wide receivers with some risk. You got older wide receivers, but I think James Cook is a good value in the 7th round right now, and a guy that's gonna get the volume. Like I look at a lot of people are saying I don't want to in on James Cook because I feel like he's very hit or miss. But if you look at that last 8 games when Brady took over as offensive coordinator, it wasn't so much hit or miss. It was hits for 5 straight weeks, and then they started to rest a little bit more, started to get more people involved to get into the playoffs. And I think James Cook is going to be an RB1 again in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. I think you absolutely nailed it there. It's not even, for me, it's like I look at the landscape in like a 1 to 2 year window.
Yes.
And the fact that I can get like a Mixon plus for James Cook or like a Kamara plus or a Derrick Henry plus is just why I won't own James Cook.
Yeah.
But I it's nothing against James Cook. Like if he finishes top 10 this year, I would not be shocked. Like I think that's a very possibility for like a James Cook and a Rachaad White. It's just all about the dynasty landscape and the value and the fact that I can just get maybe Mixon in a second or Kamara in 2 seconds. Like that's the type of move.
Those are always our guys.
Yeah, I'm always looking for a move. Like I flipped Kenneth Walker, a guy that I was just talking about positively at the beginning of this pod, for Mixon in 2 seconds, 25 seconds. One of them's probably going to be 210, 212, but I got 2 seconds and I'll take Mixon. Mixon could probably outscores Walker this year in points. So
I think what's funny is you and I both think the same way. Like, so when I'm looking at running backs, you talk Kamara, I usually talk Mixon, and I'm literally looking at every running back when I go to trade, and I'm looking at the trade partner who has Mixon, and I'm like, what can I get on top of Mixon to get from this guy? And like mentally, I'm looking through every roster, every one where I'm like, okay, I have this guy. How can I get Mixon plus?
and that's 2 trades done before I even do the first one.
Yeah, so then we're trying to make those deals. A couple other guys in that area I want to talk about. Jacobs, we've talked about plenty in the past. Isaiah Pacheco is someone that is going round 8 in all the startups. He's falling behind all of these guys. And I say he's worth a late first. I'm not actively trying to pay a late first, but Isaiah Pacheco has finished as a RB14, RB15 back-to-back seasons. You can't deny that the Kansas City offense is going to be more potent this year. There's an opportunity where he could get 12 to 15 touchdowns, where he would be a guy that is the clear workhorse there, and he's cheaper. Could he get replaced in 2025? Yes, but I feel like sometimes in Dynasty we talk about a guy like Derrick Henry, and they're like, oh, well, he's done after this year. And we've been saying that for 2 years with Isaiah Pacheco because he's an undrafted free agent, right? Oh, he's done after this year. No, they're going to get somebody else. And they haven't been. They trust him. He's their guy. You know what I mean? And I think he has borderline RB1, top 12 type potential for 2024 again. And he's cheaper than everybody on this list. Most people, once I posted this, I have Jonathan Brooks in the same tier as all these guys and above that. But everybody else is like, yo, you have Pacheco in there? I absolutely do. I think you can get him for a pair of 2s, but I think he's worth a first. I'm not ready to pay it, but I think he is a guy that puts up top 12 to 15 numbers at a discount.
I think he's better than James Cook and Rachaad White. Like, not more talented, but I think he's just in a much better situation.
I was so mad that, a guy traded up right in front of Guru and myself and took Isaiah Pacheco because I was going to take him over White and I was going to take him over James Cook. I don't have him there in my rankings, but if you're a win now team, I'm all in for, Isaiah Pacheco. Then that's it for me. That's it. I do think Trey Benson by the end of the season is worth a 25 first. As soon as as soon as James Conner gets hurt, which he will at some point. Trey Benson takes over this position and doesn't look back. James Conner is at that point in his career where, we've invested second round picks in him for the last 3 years. He's given us great production. But as soon as he goes down to any kind of injury and Benson starts to go 1A, 1B, or he gets a bad injury and Benson takes over, he has top 8 potential for a rookie draft. That's where he is right now. He has that kind of potential in the right offense with Kyler Murray, with Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. I mean, he is the next guy on that list for me. He's a guy to definitely invest in. What I really want to talk about is that next area, right? We're at that area where what do we do with the rest of these running backs, right? The ambiguous situations, the guys that are rookies that are going to get some opportunities, the running backs in a lesser offense that have higher potential, the vets that are, they're on potent offenses, the guys that we're investing in. The first thing I want to talk about, we just talked about Benson, but I think Benson and Brooks have RB1 potential, as does Blake Corum if we get some injuries. If Kyron goes down, I think Corum jumps in as an instant redraft or dynasty back-end RB1. If Connor goes down, I think Benson has top 8 to 10 potential when Brooks finally gets it going. And let's not, a lot of people are saying, man, he's going to come right out the gates hot. That's not going to happen. With the injury that he had, they're going to ease him in. But by week 8 to 10, I could see all 3 of these guys increasing significantly in value where they're worth more than what they were in rookie drafts.
Yeah, exactly. Those 3 especially. I mean, that's the big 3. We know that. We've known that from the beginning. They all got pretty decent landing spots. Corum could see backseat. Same with Benson, but Brooks, I think maybe the first couple weeks he's not backseat, but eased into it. But I think Brooks could have one of those from week 8 to 17 where he's just crazy popping off.
And skyrocket in value.
Bryce Young's going to be a check down merchant, so I think it's going to be a great situation for Brooks to gain value into next year. And he's in my top 10 too. Or he might be 11. No, he's
got 3 down workhorse ability where when he comes in and starts. Now, now, I don't have him top 10. I have him behind those guys we talked about, White, Cook, and Walker. And I think the day he comes back, and that'll be too late, but the day he comes back, he passes them all. And I think I look at the market value right now and see an area where he gets to RB10, RB9, where he passes all of those guys.
I have him 10.
Yeah. And I think, and you're just a little bit ahead of the curve on that. And that's something that's, if you're a rebuilding team and you can trade any of those guys for Brooks plus, you do it. Even if you can trade Brooks straight up for those 4 guys, you do it because you're, 1, taking the points off your roster, and then 2, he's going to be worth all of those guys, worth more than them. So I love that, talking about those 3 rookies. The next part I want to talk about is running backs in lesser offenses. This is more of that ambiguous running back, a guy that's in a situation that's outside the top 15 running backs, outside the top 20 opportunities in offenses, the offenses themselves. I'm looking at a guy, let's start with Rhamondre Stevenson. Rhamondre Stevenson had a fantastic sophomore season. He broke out last year, didn't meet the expectations. Now you get Drake May, definite quarterback upgrade. You have Antonio Gibson comes in, which might take a little bit away from his PPR. What are we willing to do with Rhamondre Stevenson right now? I find myself, giving a second and something equivalent of a third. He's definitely outside that first. I have him, all these guys that we're going to talk about with Ram, Zamir, Javonte, Pollard, Najee. I have them all worth that 203 to 207. When you're in your rookie draft, that's kind of what they're worth. Yep. Are you willing to invest in a Rhamondre Stevenson for 2024?
I am, because I think he's super cheap and he has a clear path to volume there in New England. And I think, it's gonna have Brissett or a rookie QB. There's gonna be a lot of check down opportunity there for him. He's definitely the workhorse. Gibson just never has been able to put it all together, so he doesn't really do anything there for me. I think Rhamondre is a really good buy, honestly. He's someone that has kind of gotten lost in the sauce for me, especially. I forgot he even existed until you mentioned him, which is crazy. So I might have to go buy some Rhamondre because I think he has the talent. He was just had an injury riddled season last year, so.
Yeah, he's RB35 on the season, but he didn't play after week 12. In week 12, he blew up. He had, 21 carries, 98 yards, a touchdown, 5 receptions. You look at what he did before his injury, he had 5 games over 6 receptions. That's very rare, for a guy like that. Like his targets per game, I'm sorry, those were targets. His targets per game, he was averaging over 4 targets a game. That's something that's huge. Now you get Drake May in there, and I think they're going to want to keep him healthy. What he was able to do from week 6 to week 10, he was over 20 fantasy points almost every single week. You know what I mean? In a horrible offense. This year, you have to believe that the offense improves. They go out there, they go and get Baker, they go and get Polk. They're trying to put some weapons around Drake May. The best security blanket you can have is a running back that catches passes. And I think Gibson and him both do. Gibson is a nice handcuff. Rhamondre Stevenson, buy the dip. I think you can buy him for 205, 206. I think you can tear down from those guys that we were talking about and get at least an early second. And if you can tell me you get 201 plus Rhamondre Stevenson for White, Pacheco, any of those guys, go get Benson, double it up. I don't know if you're going to quite get that, but some people are really frustrated. Everyone worries about and they think about what they did for them lately, and Rhamondre Stevenson was injured, and he didn't have a flashy season. I think he's a buy. Go out there and kick the tires for Rhamondre Stevenson. Another guy that seems to be on the opposite trajectory is Zamir White. People love Zamir White. People feel like, week 17 and 18, he won you championships. But this has a very similar feel to Alexander Madison 2 years ago, where you're saying, you know what, this is a guy that flashed a little bit when he had opportunities, but are we willing to invest because it was such a small sample size? I do think Antonio Pierce is going to feed him the ball. I do think he's going to get plenty of opportunity, but the talent, I'm seeing people pay crazy prices for Zamir White. I'm seeing people draft him over Najee Harris. I'm seeing people draft him over Joe Mixon, and I'm just like, there is a small chance that he wins the job this year. There's a 100% chance he wins the job this year. There's a small chance that he's the RB1 next year, but there is a very, very good chance with all these stud running backs that he's replaced and moves back into that RB2 role. And I think you're over-investing if you're paying more than Henry, Kamara, Mixon, any of those veteran guys.
I would take those guys over him 10 times out of 10.
100%. But people are looking at the age. They're like, oh, he's young and he's strong, and he has
like 3 torn ACLs and like a broken leg already.
He has some talent there, but I think a lot of people are telling themselves false narratives that they let Josh Jacobs go because he's better. No, he's not a better running back than Josh Jacobs. They didn't want to pay him. That's it. So Zamir White is the cheap option on what could be the team that wins the 101 next year. You know what I mean? So I think there's a real world scenario where Zamir White, is he more likely to be replaced or be an RB1 this year?
More likely to be replaced.
I think so too.
But I think he could be like a high end RB2, like top 18, top 15 guy. If he stays healthy and plays all 17 games, he's not going to catch passes. He's going to be a guy that maybe cracks 1,000 yards and gets 8 touchdowns. Like that's like his type of ceiling, I think. So he's just like another. Brian Robinson is really likely, like what Brian Robinson was last year. Like that's like a likely scenario for him. But
yeah, I think that's a fair area.
Yeah.
You look at what he did over the final 4 weeks, and it was pretty fantastic. He finishes the RB12, 17, 16, and 20. In PPC, over 20 points in 3 of the last 4 games. He had 14 total targets over those 4 games. Very small sample size, but then when you look at what he did the rest of the year, he was not even, his high for carries on the season before Jacobs went down was 4. That's what we're talking about. So, it's a very small sample size. Could he pan out? If I had a 25 second, I knew it was mid to late, and I needed a running back, absolutely. Is it an early second? No way. Is it a first? I saw him go in one of my leagues the other day for a 26 first, and they're like, 26 firsts are worth the same as a 25 second. They're really not. It's just a matter of pay attention. This is a guy. There are very few running backs that I would even pay a 26 first. I wouldn't do it for Ram. I wouldn't do it for Javonte. That's where we're at. Javonte Williams, another running back who we loved coming out. He's had a string of injuries. Denver is going to be a bottom 3 to 5 offense. They get Estime. You got Jaleel McLaughlin there. What do you think about Javonte Williams' ceiling? I think a lot of people are buying him. He's going, these guys are going rounds. If you didn't invest in White, Cook, Swift, Pacheco, Walker in rounds 6 and 7, these guys are going rounds 8 and 9. I think they're a better value sometimes, but there's definitely some risk baked in.
Yeah, I was always on the anti-Javonte club until he tore his ACL and then became a value. Like there was a time he was a first round startup pick. It's probably
yep.
him and Trey Lance are probably like the two worst like first round startup pick values like
Ever.
Like it's honestly insane, but like yeah, I mean Javonte's just I never saw the ceiling with him. I never thought he was like that type of talent to be like a true 3-down like elite workhorse. Like people were comping him to like Zeke and shit. Like I never saw that. I always thought he was like a good player that has some upside if he's a starter. Like he's kind of like always was like that like Rhamondre to me. Like he could be a guy that gets like 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 40, 50 receptions and has a good year. I just don't see the consistency over that. And now it's just like, I mean, it's like a buy. He's a buy now because of how cheap he is. But it's like
it's kicking the tires for a 25-second. I mean, he was coming off the ACL injury. Breece Hall is a freak. He came off the ACL injury just popping, and Javonte had the MCL as well. From once you look at after the bye week, I mean, right there he had 25 fantasy points right before the bye against Kansas City in week 8. Week 10 through 18, he was serviceable. He was over 12 points 6 out of the last 8 weeks. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think he's going to put up points. I think they're going to be trailing a lot. That's the problem for me is I think Jaleel McLaughlin is a better pass catcher, and I think he's in there on third downs a lot more. When you hear Sean Payton talk about running backs, he talks about McLaughlin a lot. So, I mean, he's a guy that you could get for a 4th rounder in your rookie drafts. I think Estime is going to steal some goal line work, and this is probably the last year for Javonte Williams in Denver. So I mean, maybe he gets a new situation, but I'm not totally investing. Najee Harris, similar age bracket, has been super productive his first 2 years, had really struggled with Kenny Pickett. I mean, any running back was going to struggle with Kenny Pickett. For some reason, the big reason why Najee Harris was an RB1 was the dump-offs. He caught, 80-plus catches as a rookie. Last 2 years, down in that 30-40 range. Now you bring in Russell Wilson, and you change the offensive coordinator, where Bijan was getting tons of dump-off opportunities. I think, both Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are low-key buys, and I think Najee could be a back-end RB1 at cost here is well worth a 25-second.
Yeah, just like you said, I mean, I think him and Warren are both good at what they do. I think when Najee leaves, Warren's going to go through the roof if he stays the starter because I think Warren has a ton of talent. He has a lot of juice. He's kind of like that lightning to Najee's thunder.
He reminds me a lot, his career trajectory, no lie, of Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
Like, it was just
he plays similar, too.
Yeah, similar play style, very strong guy, great, out of the backfield.
Smart
and
player.
Everybody was like, you know what? He can handle 10 to 12 carries. And then when Austin took over, he went ham. And I think Jaylen Warren has some of that to his game, where if Najee walks and they don't take a running back with early draft capital and they give him an opportunity and then they go maybe round 4, take a running back, I think he could produce back-end RB1 numbers. He's the perfect 0 RB guy for me in Dynasty when I don't have anybody and I just invest in him.
Warren's going to be like that Pollard, that Rhamondre. He's
2 years ago,
when it's time for him to shine.
2 years ago in drafts, I was taking Pollard and Rhamondre everywhere, and that's perfect. And then last year it was, late in the drafts we were taking Zamir, and now I think it's Warren's that guy. But Najee could be an RB1, could be a steal at that second. You already mentioned. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. If you look at like Sanders, Jacobs, all those guys on their contract years, like they were booming.
Mm-hmm.
Like Najee needs to get paid. If he's not staying there in Pittsburgh, like this is his contract year coming up, he needs to boom. And he's back to back 1,000+ yard rushing seasons. He's touching the ball 280 to 300 times a year. Upgraded O-line big time, upgraded QB big time, upgraded offensive coordinator that loves to run the ball. Like this is Najee's time to bounce back and finish top 10. That's why I'm buying him. I just think he it's all on the table for him. And he has the ability to catch the ball. He's a very good pass catcher. The dude catches anything that comes his way. You rarely see him drop a football. He has 50+ reception upside with Russ, and I think he's just going to get the safe volume. He's not a pretty guy. His yards per carry was very upgraded. He was in the 4s finally. Like, he should be another efficient guy. I think he's kind of learning the game better, how he should use his size and his run style. But like you said, as soon as he walks, it's Warren season. I think they'll both be productive this year. I think Warren will still be a productive player, like a good 0 RB guy. if one of them goes down, the other one's going to be amazing. I just think Najee's just as cheap, and he's probably guaranteed a lot more volume, so it's just the way to go for me.
Very similar situation here. So, I mean, there's 5 running backs over the last 2 seasons that have had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, who we just talked about, and Tony Pollard. Almost identical situations if you look at it. Whoa. With Tajay Spears is that guy that we're like playing 0 RB with, right? Where you can see his path to relevance. Tony Pollard is a guy like Najee Harris, who I think has now become a value, right? He was going way too expensive last year, but now he's a value again. He went from the guy that you were paying 110 last year to now he's worth a 25 second. And this is an offense where when you listen to Tennessee talk about what they want to do, they want to pass. When they were asked about the running back room, the offensive coordinator was talking about how he wants to get Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears in space. And I think if they do that, if either of these guys go down, Pollard, if Spears wasn't in the situation, I think Pollard has the opportunity for 50 to 70 catches and back-end RB1. Same with Spears if one of these guys go down. Yep. I think both of them eat into each other, just like in Pittsburgh. I think both of them are flex relevant. With an injury, I think all 4 of them have RB2 potential if somebody goes down. And it's just a very similar situation completely in my mind.
Yep, I agree. I think Tajay's the better value, and I would rather him
Correct.
in Dynasty. Because I think when Tajay's time comes, he's going to gain a ton of value, and I don't really think Pollard can gain a ton of value at all unless he has like RB top 3 finish.
Well, and he's a little bit older.
Finish,
him and Najee are both. Yeah. I think Pollard's already 26, isn't he?
Pollard had that leg he is, but Pollard did have that leg injury last year he was coming off of.
27.
So today we could see a new, fresh version of Pollard again, but
I love what it's done for Spears. Yeah. Spears has gone from a guy that was a borderline first. They signed Pollard. Now you can get him for a mid to late second, and if you go get him, there's an area when he gets injured, because Pollard, does get injured quite a bit, he will take over. Let's talk about, and everybody's going to be like, yo, Dad, you guys always talk about these guys, but veterans on potentially potent offenses. Derrick Henry in Baltimore, Joe Mixon in Houston, Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. All 3 of these guys, and Saquon Barkley if you want to throw him in, but we talk about, who's that?
We haven't talked about him yet. DeAndre Swift in Chicago.
Oh, you love DeAndre Swift. I always pass on him because
it's
polarizing.
Have a spot for him. The upside's there. It's coming.
Everybody it's funny because people are like, oh, I thought you were a Swift guy. I was like, no, Snoop's a Swift guy. I'm kind of like, I play on the fence a little bit with Swift.
Huge Swift guy. Like
I was when he came out. Oh, for sure.
I was like,
the potential is there.
But let's talk. He was like the next Eckler.
These 3 older running backs is like in a startup. I don't want to take them because they're going in round 8 and they're going around the like elite level, upside wide receivers. There's a lot of guys that are really falling to that area. If you started out and you did the blueprint the way that I put it out there, take a shot. You already have 3 or 4 wide receivers. You have your elite tight end. You have your 2 quarterbacks. Go ahead and take a shot on these guys because these guys have tremendous upside. What I like to do is, and you and I have been talking about it forever, is we're just buying the production now. These 3 guys and Kamara. The offense for Kamara isn't as potent, but the PPR upside is there. You know what I mean?
Kubiak's there, though. We could actually see some decent play calling, and you don't got Snoog up there in the auto box calling the plays.
Yeah,
if I was up there, it'd be like check down, check down, check down, check down, check down. Swing.
I would more go with just the straight Madden plays. I'm very familiar with them. That's my claim to fame. I was top 50 in the world in Madden. I got some Madden skills. But anyways, so these 3 running backs here, Jacobs is going to cost you the most, probably in that 110 to 112 range. Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry are both in that 203 to 205 range. Kamara, I'm seeing valued a little bit lesser at 205, 206. Let's talk about these guys because this is what I'm doing on all my teams. It's like, how do I get these 4 guys? How do I transfer? How do I tier up from Zamir White to Joe Mixon? How do I tier down from, Rachaad White to Joe Mixon? How do I do these things? This is what we got to talk about. This is that next level thinking. How do you go about looking at rosters and saying, this is what I got to do?
Yeah, first off, too, I'd throw in Aaron Jones in this mix. I think the Vikings offense is really good if Aaron Jones can stay healthy. He can catch a good amount of passes in this offense with a rookie QB and maybe score a decent amount of touchdowns and have a good year. And he's another guy that's super cheap like Kamara. But the way I like to look at this is any team that has any sort of contending type vision and I don't have running backs, even if I have running backs, I'm buying these guys for vets. Throw Nick Chubb in the mix too. I tweeted this. the correct answer to which vet to buy is all of them, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
all cheap. They're all good. They're all talented. Nobody, I don't care how smart you think you are, is out there knowing what running back is going to fall off next. I'm sure everyone thought James Conner was going to be the one to fall off first with his talent and his skill set, but it was Dalvin Cook, right? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. All it takes is one injury. All it takes is one team to just say, hey, I like this guy better now. I want to go with the younger guy. He's fresher. It's crazy how the running back position is. It's probably one of the harder positions to stay healthy, stay fresh, and have a good career in. Buy them all. Buy the talented ones. Buy the ones that can catch the ball the most. Buy the ones on the best offenses. That's the correct answer. And there's a lot of them. Like, I'm buying the guy like Kamara that I know can get 70 receptions in 15 games as long as he plays that many games, right? Last year, played like 13, 14 games and had like 70-something receptions. Like, that's what I want. I want the guys with the high floors, that have the talent, that have the contract, that have the investment into them. And that's how I go about it. If I have... My process is always... QB1, QB2, try to get 2 top 12 quarterbacks. If not, then I want to have like a Dak and then a Stafford paired with like a Herbert or Mahomes or whatever. And then I like to have like good, talented young receivers built around. Like, I have this one team, it's like AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Drake London, and I have Devontae Adams and Mike Evans. And I just went all in on this wide receiver core. And that's like what I've built the foundation around. I like to have 2 to 3 young top 12 dynasty wide receivers if I can get them. It's obviously hard to get that. You got to make moves. You got to just keep building up the team. And then you got to buy those vets like the Adams, the Evans in the offseason when people are like, I don't care for them anymore. I'm not going to compete next year. You'd be surprised. You could get those guys for like seconds, or like early seconds when it comes to rookie draft. Take advantage on the rookie fever. So that's how I build. Right before the season, I'll go through every roster in every league I'm in and just look through and be like, okay, I could buy Mixon here. I could buy Kamara there. I could buy Derrick Henry here. The issue is, Dad, I already have them in every single league. So I can't do that anymore.
I own too many of them. You know, it's sad what you said about Dalvin Cook. You know, before we found out that he was the new man on the Minnesota Vikings from the Lizzo song, he fell off. His legs couldn't take it anymore. He went from being right up there with Christian McCaffrey that year in 2021 to now. Are you cutting Dalvin Cook? I'm seeing it in a lot of reasons.
Remember him and Kamara were like
they were killing it.
Running backs back to back, and they were going back and forth.
At this point, he's a cut candidate. You know, like if you're in 20-man roster, he's off. If he's 25, it's really debatable. If it's 30, I'm holding him. I like some guys here some situations that we really call ambiguous. We don't know who's going to be what. You know, we want to make sure we're investing here because some of these offenses are pretty potent, starting with the Bengals. I mean, I think the Bengals have a top 5 offense and they have 2 running backs. And it's like, this is an area where I'm investing in both of them. If it's cheap, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. I think Zach Moss showed what he could do in Indianapolis. He earned himself a contract. I think he is a screaming buy. In a couple of rookie drafts, I traded the 301, 302 for him, and I think he has potential to be a top 15 to 20 running back. Chase Brown has some PPR upside. I think both of these guys, it's like, this is an offense I just want pieces of. I want Burton in my rookie draft in case T. Higgins goes down. I want one of these running backs in case, I need a filler here. And I think there's a real world scenario where they produce some serious, upside on the back end of your bench that you can plug in later on in the year.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. We think alike. We talked about this earlier. We think alike with how we kind of run our teams and dynasty and stuff. So
we're just loading up on these kind of guys. Same with the Browns. You brought up Nick Chubb. I'm buying Jerome.
Screaming buy.
I'm buying Jerome Ford at a fraction of the cost because just like we talked about with Jonathan Brooks, I don't think Nick Chubb is ready in the beginning. Ford's going to give you, if he starts the first 8 weeks, he's going to give you at least 3 RB1 weeks. He just does that. He has crazy upside, and I think even investing in Deontay Foreman on your waiver wire is like, sometimes we play next man up. Sometimes it's that other guy, where if Chubb isn't ready and Ford goes down, Deontay Foreman could see a couple, fantasy relevant weeks. You never know. Exactly. And then it's not a sexy pick, but I've claimed him on waivers. I've traded him for 4th during rookie drafts, and I'm okay with that. The Chargers offense. This is another interesting one. Everybody wants to believe Vidal's going to take over the backfield, but it's going to be Gus Edwards. I think Gus Edwards gets that first run, and Gus Edwards in this offense, He's shown that he can catch passes. I think he could catch 20 passes. I think he could be like a extremely poor man's version of Derrick Henry, where he could have 10 touchdowns like he did in Baltimore. The offense isn't as potent there, but I think he is very cheap. You can get him for a third-round pick if someone's trying to rebuild. And I think J.K. Dobbins, as much as I want him to bounce back, the injuries have really piled up. I'm rooting for him. I'm just not investing heavily in him.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thought process too. I mean, Gus has had some injuries himself in the past, so I think it's going to be whoever's the healthy man is going to be the one booming. So I would invest in just whoever's cheaper. That's how I would look at that. And Kamani Vital too. Yeah, Kamani Vital's there. He could get some opportunity. I mean, he's a 6th-round pick, so
right.
Do with that what you want. Everyone's talking him up like he's just going to be like this Alvin Kamara or something. It's like, dude, he's a 6th-round pick from Troy.
I think this is a Zach Evans type situation where we were like, okay, I want to believe in this, but he is a 6th-rounder. It can happen. It doesn't happen often. You know what I mean? So I've seen people, Snook, I've seen people take him over Baker, Polk. I've seen people take him over Ray Davis, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, Ray Davis is an injury away from being a borderline RB1 in Buffalo. You know what I mean? Or some of these other guys, it's like, I've seen him go before Ben Sinnott, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Those are the type of people that make Dynasty easy for us.
I know.
It's just that's we love you guys. Keep doing it.
That's why you listen to this podcast. The other situation is the Cowboys. Another top 5 offense. Zeke is the cheapest option everywhere. Honestly.
It's going to be cute. He's still like 27 years old.
I know. Well, here's the crazy thing. You know, Todd Gurley's not even 30 yet. I put a post out about him. But, I mean, Zeke has outlasted everybody. He was a RB1 when Rhamondre went down from weeks 12 to 18. So, I mean, now he goes back to Dallas.
Prime Zeke.
Right?
Zeke was friggin' sick.
But I think he's still at least an RB2 if he stays healthy in Dallas. I think, with what they have there, I mean, yes, I would invest in Rico Dowdle for nothing, but I think Zeke is an RB2 this year. I think he's dirt cheap. I think if you passed on running backs early in your startup draft, you get a guy like Zeke late and you throw him in your lineup and he's going to get you 6 weeks where he helps you win, and that's at 3rd round rookie pick value, at pick, 14th round in a startup. I think he's great value. Yeah. Why not? And this is that area. Well, you don't know what it is, but redraft or dynasty, I'm investing.
Yeah, the next Zeke, Kamara, CMC, like Gurley wave. It's gonna be Brees, Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, JT, Travis Etienne. Like that's gonna be the 5 guys that are gonna fix that landscape for us just for the next few years and just be like those elite, high producing running backs, in my opinion. So I'm excited for that because I do love running back, and it's fun when you have those type of guys in there. Like, man, like prime Zeke, prime Kamara.
Yeah, they're coming in.
CMC.
If you like those guys in 2017, 2016, 2020, you like those running backs that you got, that you're going to get it in 2025. Like 2024 did not have the running backs. That's why we said build around your wide receivers. This is the perfect time if you're rebuilding to void your running backs, get as many firsts as possible. Right now, I have 3 rebuilds. All of them have 5+ firsts, and they're going to just load up in running backs. It happened in 2023, right? I rebuilt in 2022. Then you fill in with Bijan. You fill in with Gibbs, A-Chain. You start filling that in, and all of a sudden, you're like, oh, dang. All those teams. I had 4 rebuilding teams, and I drafted all 3 of them and all of them won the next season. Like, that's what you're going to do again in 2025. Picture just throwing in Judkins, Gordon, Henderson, Junty. Start throwing those guys in. Now your roster is nasty. I've been telling that to people in the Patreon. It's like, you know what? This is the perfect year to retool. If you're middle of the pack, just create a running back void, get yourself to a top 3 to 4 running back in next year's class, and now all of a sudden you're building into a dynasty. That's what we want to do. We want to invest in young wide receivers, fill in with the running backs. This has been a fun show. Make sure you guys check out the Patreon. We have all of our rankings in there for startups. I have mine right now, 1 through 150. I'll be bumping it up to 200. We have guys that on the clock rooms where you can talk to people. You have DMs to both Snoog and myself. You have all the rankings, all the rooms, everything set up in there. Scott Fishbowl's coming up, redrafts coming up. All those things will help you out. So make sure you guys check those out. Thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process. Yo, that felt better.